listening to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. Welcome to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. This is Charles Laux, and I have next to me live in my studio a good friend and also colleague from Cobb County School District. This is Harrison Cook, and Harrison is the orchestra director at Kennesaw Mountain High School, kind of on the west side of town a little bit. And he's a wonderful cellist, plays with the Atlanta Opera. And how long have you been at Kennesaw Mountain?
This is my second year.
Second year there, okay.
And then I did 4 years at Sprayberry and 3 years at Simpson Middle School.
Okay, so you've had some middle school and some high school. So we have Harrison here, and we're just going to kind of get to know you, I guess. So tell us a little bit about your training and where you're from and what you've done.
Yeah, so I started on piano at 2 or 3 from my mom.
Okay.
And,
Wow.
Yeah, having your mom as a teacher is hard. So when we were 9, she wanted us to pick a second instrument, and I wanted to play violin. And we were in a very small town in Tennessee, and there was no violin teacher, or they didn't have a room in the studio. And a cellist had just moved to town, and we were like, okay, we'll pick that one. And I just picked it up immediately and instantly stopped playing piano to my later regrets. Yeah, I'm now retrying to relearn it. I can get around okay, but
Nice. How long did you take piano for then?
for 8 years.
Oh, 8 years. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I did it. I say I quit immediately. It was probably when I was 10 or 11 that I stopped officially doing piano. But having the theory training, and I was also a singer a lot. I was a double major in undergrad for voice and cello.
Really? I had no idea. I didn't
2
know
years.
that.
Yeah. And then
Once again, made a good choice.
yeah. Well, the choice was, where can I actually make money doing this? And I wasn't going to be good enough to be an opera singer, and cello just had more doors open. So I went that way. But my mom was a musical theater director, and from the second I could play the cello, she was writing me parts that were simple enough that I could at least get around it, which I had no idea the training that it was giving me. But like, you play in every key in musical theater, right?
Right.
So even just learning like D flats and G flats and how to get around and how to follow that, like I was doing that from 10 until I graduated high school.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then I kept playing a little bit, but I sang, I acted, kind of the triple threat thing minus the dancing. I was terrible. And undergrad was double in voice and cello, and that started at Columbus State University, so local school.
Yeah, down
and
there.
then ended up transferring to study with Martha Grishevsky at Georgia State, which was the best decision I've ever made. She was unbelievable as a cello teacher. And I'm a naturally musical player, not so much technically, and she just ripped me apart. It's like, okay, we're going back to scales, learn this whole thing.
Back to the
And
drawing board.
that was the first time I'd really had a glimpse of the pedagogy of it, because I've always been good enough to just figure it out. But she was like, okay, justify your decision for this. And she had music, she had fingerings for everything. And if I ever didn't like something, she encouraged arguing in her lessons. She was like, if you can justify changing it, cool. So,
Challenge me.
yeah. And it made me be aware of,
Yeah.
every shift and like, what am I actually doing through this? And then grad school at Carnegie Mellon up in Pittsburgh. And then I came down and I was fully dead set. My dream was to play at the Atlanta Symphony.
Okay.
And I was auditioning around the country and taking auditions, taking and losing. And
It's a really challenging.
it's brutal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I teach privately now, and it's rare that a student will come up to me and say, hey, I want to be a music major. And I'm like, are you sure? But I've sent a couple off, and they're doing extremely well.
Yeah, you have a cellist you that graduated last year. I know.
Yeah, Alex.
Yeah.
He's up at Peabody right now with Alan Stepansky. He's great. And prior to him, I had Connor Swain, who I think just graduated from Indiana. So he was up there.
Yeah, so you've had some
I've had
really good talent come through.
Yeah, and in my studio, there's usually one hot shot, and then nothing against the other ones, but it's not their main thing.
Yeah,
But, they're learning a lot from it. And I love teaching, but I never planned on teaching. That was never in my mind.
I've heard that so many times from people. It's like, I never dreamt that I would be here doing this. Yeah.
So when I was gigging a ton and just taking auditions, there's nothing to do during the day. So I started subbing for high schools, and I was actually subbing at Lassiter with Carol. Because Koji, who's now at Harrison High School, was out doing something, and I was helping to lead. And she's like, you're really good at this. There's an opening at this middle school. And I was like, okay, because I was making like no money,
Right.
take auditions everywhere. And my life flipped upside down overnight because I I took the interview Thursday, and they called me the next day, and they're like, "We got the job," and I was like, "Oh, what did I do?
Yeah, and then
What have I done?" Yeah.
because you didn't have a license probably at
No,
that
no,
point.
yeah.
So, and now in some states they have that, alternative route to licensure. You have a degree, and then you got to take classes, or what did you have to do to get your license?
Yeah, so when they hired me, they gave me a 3-year temporary non-certification certificate.
Right,
If that makes sense.
or non-renewable or whatever.
Yeah, so you're paid basically like a parapro.
Oh, wow.
It's
Okay.
not the normal
didn't
pay
get the
rate,
full-
because
wow.
I have a master's degree and everything, and I was all excited, and then I got my first paycheck. I was like, oh god.
Yeah.
But again, stability is fantastic.
Yeah.
And not to get too much in the weeds with it, but I was married at the time, and right when I got that job, we started having some issues. Or sorry, it was the second year. And the first year, I was like, let me get my feet wet, make sure this is what I want to do before I start that, because it's a 2-year program. They have the Georgia TAP program,
Okay.
which is for teachers. It's designed for current teachers to go get your certification. And I went through Georgia State University because I already had connections there.
Right.
And again, it was a 2-year, so I was like, let me get my feet wet. First year taught, second year I was like, great, I'm going to start. And then I got divorced. And that, if you've ever been through that, it's awful. And mentally, it's just a lot going on. So I ended up starting my 3rd year, and they granted me extensions and all this, as long as I was proving that I was going through the program. But those 2 years were hard because you're teaching nonstop, and then you drive downtown every day or every other day in the evenings, taking all the certification classes. But once that was done, life was pretty good.
You're good.
And thankfully, the student teaching was, I'm already doing it. So
You
they
were
were just
getting
coming
paid
in
for
to-
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, that's the best student teaching
And
gig
then
ever, right?
when you graduate, I mean, instant pay bump. I'm like, hey,
That's
life is good.
that's true. Yeah, that's good. You got on the regular schedule, and you got teaching or the pay scale schedule, and
And I'll tell you, starting middle school was the best thing for behavior management. Like, I had no idea. And Dana Tyndall, who's at Simpson, she was the head director there.
yeah, and she's one of my feeders at Lassiter, and they're playing at GMEA this week, so I'm real excited to be able to conduct a piece for them, and super proud of them because they sound great.
Yeah, and she's such a good director.
She's amazing.
And
Yeah.
I get along with the kids really, really well, and it was a fun dichotomy because she's a little more strict, and I would go in and be really friendly. But I learned a ton from her, and I'm sure maybe she'll see this. I'm not saying this to Pat. She's great. She's a really, really good teacher. If kids going there, they're very lucky. So I did 3 years there, and then I started at Sprayberry, which is the direct feeder to Simpson Middle, and
What took you to high school?
I always wanted to. Part of it may just be kind of ego, but I really wanted to do the upper level music.
Right?
Yeah, and
I mean, it's fun.
It is, and musically, it's not super fulfilling doing Dragon Hunter year after year after year. Again,
Some people can do it forever. There's some middle school teachers that are lifers doing that, and
there's nothing against it.
it's
at
great.
all.
I mean, I miss my middle school days, honestly. I don't know.
6th graders are still my favorite group to teach. Like, they have no ego. They're excited to play.
Yeah.
They don't know what's happening, but that's okay. As long as they're eager. And that's what we want out of musicians. It's just, or students, just be eager about playing. That's all I really want. But while I was teaching and doing the certification, I was also still auditioning.
Oh,
and
wow. Okay.
Playing with the ballet and the opera, and I was subbing with the symphony. So busy.
I don't know how you can do that. Yeah.
It was a lot. And this past year, this is 2025 now, I pseudo-retired from all that. And I do, if it's a fun gig, I'll take it. But I had to figure out a work-life balance because I've never known what that is, and had to learn the long way how to do that. But I don't regret it all. I mean, if I started playing when I was 10, I had a 20-year career of playing.
Yeah.
And very proud of it, and glad I got to do it. And I've learned a ton. And one of the best things I ever did when I got hired was I made the deal with the admin that this is good for me to go and still perform because I'm getting a ton of experience from it. It's keeping my chops up. I get to watch other conductors and learn from them. And then whenever I was gone, I would hire other directors to come in and work with the kids. So it's a win-win for everybody. And like for the opera, we got free tickets. So my kids could get to come and see me perform. So
that's cool. Yeah.
It's perfect. And everywhere I go, I just make that deal. Like, I'm still going to do this. It's really important for me and the kids.
Well, it's nice that you have the admin that will support that, I think, different schools, different situations may not have that kind of support, a little bit more micromanaging and locking you down, and and there's something to be said for being there and doing that, but there's also something to said like your students will grow if you grow. That's I mean professional development, and why we go to ASTA and our state conference and Midwest or whatever.
Yeah, and I'm sure you know this, in the performing world, it's very cutthroat. The audition process it's terrible. You're always competing
like how
against other
many
people.
people are auditioning for one cello spot?
Yeah, and that like the Symphony, I auditioned for them 3 times. And I'm not going to go through the whole audition process, but it's rough. If we want to do one on that, we can. But the first time, I probably shouldn't have auditioned. I was still in grad school, and I flew down to take it. But my teacher, Joel Dallow, was in the Symphony, and he helped me prep for it and helped me go for it. Yeah. Didn't pass the first round, but I think they had like 300 or 400 applications for one spot.
For one spot.
And they went through the whole thing, didn't hire anybody. And then they did another round, didn't hire anybody. And they did that twice before they even hired anybody. And then COVID happened and all this.
Wow.
And it's a brutal thing. But one thing that I always appreciated, Bill Nye the Science Guy, had a really good quote that everyone you meet knows something that you don't. And even when I go and I'm taking an audition, I would always talk to other people. And you're not supposed to, but I always tried to listen, and hear what are they sounding like, which is ill-advised. Don't do that. But I'm always trying to figure out, okay, where can I improve? And when I'm teaching, I go the same way. I always remember back to middle school, I didn't know how to play violin at all. I'd never touched a violin. Yeah. And yet I'm supposed to be teaching them. So I did a lot of, how would you play this? Right. And I'm learning from the students, and it really gave me a good bond with them. Yeah. And now in the high school, I try to give them as much ownership as they can, and then I'm trying to learn from them at the same time. And like now I've kind of got vibrato, and I can shift. I try to make sure I can play whatever I'm teaching. Yeah. But there's always something you can learn from, whether it's a student or a colleague or anything.
Well, so I mean, that's part of the reason that he's here is we're gonna go through some violin pedagogy, which is my principle. And I said, okay, well if that's the deal, then you're gonna show me some cello tricks, that I can use, and just clarification of some things. But taking advantage of the people that are just in your backyard for just learning and experiences.
That's
so we just set this up, and that's fantastic. I'm excited.
Yeah. One thing I love about Cobb is the congeniality between everybody. There's really no bad blood between everybody, and I know I can call you anytime, or Koji, or any of my friends, and they'll help and give me scores if I need to for LGPE or fingerings, bowings.
We're pretty fortunate because there's a lot of people. I know some people that listen to this podcast that don't have the colleagues right next door, and so hopefully this resource that I'm providing and people bringing people on, just getting information out there will help people feel like, oh, okay, I do have a friend or a neighbor that I can call on and talk to. And
I've never felt alone as a teacher here, which is nice. I'm not just in my hole. Like there's always people around.
It's pretty nice. Yeah. It's pretty nice. So one of the things that we had talked about was, well, you just mentioned it, I guess, was having the kids take that ownership of their learning and of whatever the tasks are. Can you tell us, I know you had talked about the way that you're doing some of your playing checks and things, high school playing checks.
Yeah, so let me start this off with, I hate grading. If I could just show up every day and just conduct, life would be good. And I'm sure we're all the same way. So,
for sure.
So the first thing, this was post-COVID, everything's coming back. I'm like, how can I revamp some of these things? And I'm thinking, how can I avoid grading, but still make them better, or make them take ownership? And the other aspect, and this is something that's been going on in our county, it's like, how do we do auditions for honor orchestra? Should it be in person? Should it be virtual? Because virtual is great during COVID, but as a professional player, there's something to be said for sitting down in front of somebody and feeling those nerves, because when you can record 60 times and take
That's right. That's right. And then, there's something to be said for that because, some of us, my thing is like, I just want you to learn the music, but at the same time, there's something to be said for coming in live too. Yeah.
And for me, it's a performing art. And unlike a visual medium where you're painting and then you hang it up and you disappear, you can talk if you want to, but you don't have to. But in music, you have to perform for people or else you're not doing anything. So getting that nervous energy out and understanding that it can be helpful is really important. Now, that said, virtual stuff, if they take 60 takes. They've effectively practiced 60 times,
Well,
which is great.
Yeah.
Right? So there's advantages to both. But what I've started doing, what I came up with was, it sounds brutal. I will admit it's kind of draconian, but I prepped them for August, September. I'm like, this is coming. It's going to be okay. This is coming. It's going to be okay. I have a giant Excel spreadsheet, and I just import all the names by section. So violin 1, violin 2, viola, cello. And then it's like an all-state score sheet. You got tone, rhythm, articulation, musicality, movement, just seeing if they're actually moving,
Nice.
and a couple other things. And you can customize it how you want to. And then 1 through 5, 1 through 5, 1 through 5. And everybody gets the entire spreadsheet. And it's
Of
2
every
pages,
kid and every
kid,
section.
every section.
So if you're a bass player, you're still going to be.
Yep. So everybody listens to you. And that's important too, because it's easy to just care about your section and then just sit on your phone, right? But I really want everybody listening to each other and, more importantly, encouraging each other. And I say, you will never say anything, let me hear anything negative about any
Right.
colleague, because you're going to mess up when you do your playing test because of nerves. And they may mess up a lot because of nerves. And the whole point is just to get this out.
Yeah.
But we go down and we roll dice, and violin 1's roll to 1, they're going first. You know,
Okay,
we just
nice.
go down. And it's just person, play, all the way down. It's usually not too long, but it's usually one portion from one piece, one from another piece, next person go. And initially the kids are like, go slower, because they're trying to go. And I'm like, no, you just use your gut, you know, whatever it is. And they score everything straight across, and they put the chair of the student, which,
they're doing the ranking.
yeah, let me preface it. This is it sounds brutal. And I have discussions with every kid, especially the kids in the back, that I know are going to freak out or not have a good experience. Because the point isn't to tear anybody down. That's not,
Right.
Our classes aren't designed for that. I want them to appreciate music and love it.
Yeah.
So they have 3 goals. And for some of the students, they may not be ready to do that. You know, even if I know they can play it in class, mentally, they're just not there. So they can play the audition for me privately. Totally
Okay.
fine. But they're not eligible for one of the top chairs,
Sure.
which
Well, I mean,
seems
that,
fair.
That,
And
that makes sense.
honestly, they don't want to sit there anyways, you know?
Yeah.
They're just happy to be in the class.
Yeah.
But what I always tell them when they come in audition is like, my goal is for you to eventually be comfortable playing for the group, because we're all trying to encourage each other. And I say, maybe next time, can you do just one of the excerpts for the group? The other one you do for me. And then by spring semester, hopefully everybody's at least participating.
Nice.
The second goal is survive, which is, okay, I'm going to do it. I don't care what chair I get, but I'm going to get through it, hopefully without too many tears. And there's always going to be kids that cry. And if I see it happening, I try to negate as much as I can. I'm like, hey, let's just take a break. We're going to move on over here, kind of thing. And if it's still going to be an issue, I'll pull them aside and say, hey, let's just do an in-person one this time.
Yeah.
Again, that's not the point. But I do want them, normally it's not because...
You don't want them to be uncomfortable to the point
Correct.
where they're
Yeah.
not going to want to play anymore. They see playing in a negative light, you know?
Yeah. And normally they're not crying because they don't know what's happening or they don't know how to play it. It's just the amount of nerves and the pressure. And that, again, we're trying to get them used to that pressure, because when you're on the stage in front of, for LGPE, we're in front of different schools. We've got
Right.
judges, like
Yeah.
county supervisors. It's a lot of pressure. And if you're not used to it in front of your friends and colleagues, you're not going to be
Right.
comfortable on
That's a good
stage.
point. That's a good point.
And of course, the third goal is try to get first chair. So
Do you have any kids that you know are like first chair kids, but just are balls and nerves when they're having to play in front of their peers, that it negatively impacts them?
it can, but that's part of the deal. You know, like maybe you've been taking lessons for a long time and you know what's happening, but it's still the performing aspect of it too. It's like a dual-sided coin. So if you don't have a perfect audition, maybe you're going to sit second chair. But what I've found from doing this is no student ever comes up and complains about their chair. They know where they rank because they see each other. And let me also say, nobody shares each other's score sheets. They turn them all in. That's their grade. I do a master one, and then they get them back and they can see. And if they thought they were going to get first chair and they got fourth, they can go through and say, their tone score was way better. Yeah, I agree. And that's completely gone, which is good. The other thing, I call it trauma bonding, which is kind of true, but the sections get way closer together after doing this, because there's always these dark horses that come out of nowhere that practice kind of on their own, but normally sit in the back, and all of a sudden they play great and they're thrust to the front. And everybody's like, oh, I had no idea they were that good. But they always shuffle their feet after everybody plays, and they can tell when people are getting nervous and they start encouraging. And they're like, oh, you got this. Hang on, just breathe. And they help each other through it. And then after every audition cycle, you see them like high-fiving or it's like
bond.
all of a sudden they're friends together.
Yeah.
And
That's just like a great byproduct of the whole thing, the whole
and
process.
that was kind of the selling point for me because, yes, I want them to get used to the performing side of it too, but it's a team activity, and you can't just play great yourself. You have to encourage everybody else around you to do it. And then they start asking for advice from each other, and they're like, hey, can you help me with this fingering? And all of a sudden, everything just starts getting better and
That's
better.
community. Yeah.
So
That's community.
there's a lot of prep work to it. You can't just jump in and be like, hey, we're doing this, because they'll freak out. But let them know what's happening. Say, it's okay if you don't want to do this. And the first year you do it, you may not get 100% involvement. But by the second semester, everybody's like, okay, this is happening. And then they start taking it seriously because you can't hide behind the screen. You don't get 60 repetitions to get your best
Do you
one.
think that has made your kids just better overall? I mean, have you seen just a general improvement of their playing and confidence levels? And
Yeah, like we have auditions coming up next week for LGPE and all that, and kids are coming in and they're practicing during lunch or staying after school because they know it's coming, but it's not a hyper-competitive, toxic, this is coming. It's, hey, this is something we have to do.
I remember challenges in high school, and I hated that.
Yeah,
and it's like you would make one mistake. I remember someone beating me because I made one mistake, and it was like the worst. It was the most crushing thing ever.
And I don't want the toxic side of that because I dealt with that for years in the professional side. Where,
Sure.
I mean, if you don't get a good chair, you're stuck in that, and you're constantly thinking, I know I'm better than them. I know I'm better. And it doesn't help anything.
No.
And here there's always room to improve. And like with regular playing test, I grade harshly, but they can always redo the playing tests because that makes them practice.
Yeah.
And as long as you practice and get better, I'll give you 100. I don't care.
Right.
As long as you turn something in on time, you may not get a good score. You don't like it, retake it. Great. I don't care.
Yeah. I mean, the goal is for them to get better, to learn the music, and learn from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the community side of it too, because outside of my first year at Sprayberry, I required every student in my top group to take the all-state audition. I was like, this is a great idea. Terrible idea. Don't do it. Especially my first year.
Yeah.
Like it wasn't great.
So we all make some mistakes like that.
You make decisions. And then I instantly backed off of that. Sorry, what was the comment you made right before, or the question you asked? I don't remember why I started talking about that, but
no, I mean about the grading.
No, about why I forced them all to take the all-state audition.
I remember. I was saying like the goal is to make them better, but
the community side of that. So
go.
Me forcing them to do the all-state thing actually caused divisions. Right?
Oh,
because
okay.
They were then against me, right? It's like Mr. Cook's making me do this thing, and now I encourage them all to take that if they want to,
right?
And we make.
How many kids did you have audition for?
So last year we only had 3 or 4 audition, I think, and 2 made it. And this year we had 10 passed the first round, which is great. We had something like 18 auditions.
In Georgia, we do 2 rounds of auditions. They're all live, and the first round they have to get a certain score to move on to the second round. The second round is a little more rigorous and some really difficult excerpts from the music, and sight reading, which really sets people apart,
right?
If they make it or not, because a lot of kids will be able to play the excerpts, but it's that sight reading piece that is brutal.
Yeah, but this year we had 3 make it and 3 alternates, so everything's going up, and that the students now see that because I make them play their audition stuff if they want to, for their group, just trying to encourage them like, hey, you're about to do it in front of people, let's get the nerves out. And the other students see that, they're like, oh, they're really good. They start asking for advice and just trying to propagate that idea that we all want to get better doing this, but we can rely on each other to help us get there.
Very cool. Yeah. What else? What are some other things that you do, with your kids that maybe is not the norm or not or something special that has worked well for you? So maybe it's something other people do, but something that just definitely works for you like every time.
Like even just like rehearsal technique type of stuff. I have severe ADHD, if you can't tell from my ramblings. But I personally need variety. You know, it helps me as a teacher, and I think it helps the kids too. So,
well, it just keeps you from getting bored.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
I have an Apple Watch on now, but I always have some timepiece around, just so that if I'm working with the violins, I try not to do more than 3 or 4 minutes because they start getting bored over here. The cellos and basses, of course, always doing that. So I'll work on it for a bit, and if it doesn't get better, I'm like, hey, I'm not saying there's going to be a playing test, but there might be a playing kind of hint, wink, wink. And then I'll move on. And if we need to come back to it, we will. So trying not, it's so hard when you have a melody that's not working or it's not in tune to just want to dig into that thing. But we're block schedules. So we have an hour and a half. So we can
hour and a
do
half
that.
every single day
It's
with his
awesome.
kids.
Yeah. So we can do 30 minutes of warm-ups.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
We're in the same district, but I'm in one of the 3 remaining high schools with traditional 50-minute periods.
Yeah.
And it's when I hear what they get to do with an hour and a half, I'm really jealous.
It's nice. But I don't have any other time pieces in the room. So they can't tell what time it is. If they ask me, I'm like, I promise I will get you out on time.
Sure.
And if I don't, like, I'm apologetic. I'll give them extra time at the end of the next one kind of thing. But making sure that they know I'm going to do 3 or 4 minutes. You better be ready to go. And if I'm working on measure 118 with them, we're probably about to start at measure 118 when we stop.
Yeah,
just
be ready.
to make them focus. And I try to, we do a lot of finger hammering. I don't know if you do a lot of that.
Sure.
So a lot of teachers want like a perfectly quiet classroom whenever they're working. Like if they're working on their stuff and this is practicing, even if they're not using their bow, like that's super helpful, which helps in sight reading at LGPE and Allstate as well, right? Just getting those fingers moving. Other things I play D&D a lot, and I have a dice set.
Oh, okay.
And
that's Dungeons and Dragons for you that don't know. I don't play it, but I know of it.
It's great. You have multiple different dice, and I'm sure you've all experienced like, let's just do it again. Just do it again. They're like, oh, fine. Let's do it 5 times. Oh, God. So I used to say, okay, let's do it 10 times. They thought it was brutal. 10 times in a row. Oh, my gosh. So now I have a 20-sided dice, and they roll it. So that I'm not the bad guy, right? And now they're excited if it's a 12. They're like, at least it's not 18. You know, but I just have it on my podium, and I'm like, here's a spot, roll it. And they roll it. If it's ever below a 5, we re-roll.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Just to make sure it's worth doing. And that way, again, if they roll a high number, it's now on that kid. It's his fault.
Perfect.
that we're doing it again. And it always keeps the kids on their toes a little bit.
Sure.
It's like, here we go. And the other one that's really keeps them on their toe, we call it the Wheel of Doom, which is it's like the Price is Right wheel on the wall that has every kid's name on it. And as we're prepping for auditions or anything like that, spin it. And whoever's name it lands on, they have to play through a certain portion. And
wow.
If it's a student that I know is going to really struggle, they can pull on their best friend, but they get to choose who they want to. Doesn't have to be from their section. Could be violin. You're going to play
fantastic.
it with me, right?
Yeah.
Just to make it a little more fun. And I don't want that toxic atmosphere, but you also have to hold them accountable.
Yeah. And you want it to be competitive, and you want it to be fun, and that's why they're there. I mean,
yeah. Like, there's not many jobs you get to play for a living. And I constantly remind my students, like, we're playing at the end of the day, you know, and it's hard and it's technical, especially strings. I always tell them, like, try to teach your parents Twinkle Little Star, and you'll appreciate how good you are now, even if you don't think you are. Because, not that we have a violin here, but
mine's packed up. I'll get it out.
It's fine. If you put your bow on a string, the deflection point, the distance from one string to your bow hair and the other string to your bow hair, if you think about it conceptually, you're pulling from here to here, and the width doesn't move at all. That's a lot of control.
Yep.
And there's a reason 6th graders double stop and scrunch everything. And even if you're in the freshman group and you don't think you're good, you're way better than most of the population of the planet.
That's right.
This specific skill. And just reminding them that you guys are really good. Like, we're not chamber good, but we'll get there. You know, these are all the different techniques.
Yeah. And you have 3 orchestras, a freshman group, right? And then do you have a non-audition group?
At Sprayberry, when we had 4 groups, I had a non-audition and then audition into the top 2. And the second tier down was like preparation for chamber. It tended to be underclassmen, sophomore, juniors. Almost all the seniors ended up in chamber, just by virtue of doing it this way. And the freshmen, regardless of skill level, I think it's important for them to get used to the culture of the orchestra program, and then they can audition out of that. So right now, it's technically both audition groups to get up there, but if you don't get in a chamber, you're going to be in the middle one.
Okay. Yeah. Very cool. Very cool.
How do you do it at yours?
Right now we have 4, and I have there's 4 level ability-based groups. And I have some sophomores and a couple of juniors in my youngest group. And then I have 10 through 12 and some freshmen in the second group. And then I have a mix and all of the rest. They're all mixed. So.
I think having that middle non-audition group is really important.
Yeah, I'm actually switching to that next year. So my second group will be a 10 through 12 non-auditioned, and then I'll have a freshman group. And the freshmen will still be able to audition up. Yeah. But I think it'll be helpful to really make those top 2 groups as strong as possible and a little bit more serious, because you have the kids who love orchestra. They just don't really want to practice, and they don't want to do anything outside of class. So that's what that'll be for.
That's why I brought up the All-State thing earlier. I forgot that when I first got there, I was thinking, man, all these kids are going to want to be music majors, and like 1, maybe 2, which is percentage-wise, 3% of your program might go and be music majors, everybody else is not. So what's the point of what we're doing? We want them to appreciate music, of course, and be better people for having taken the class, for whatever that is. So for me, it's when you go into an interview, it's no different than an audition. You're just auditioning with words instead of something else. And there's pressure when you interview. Like even this, if I wasn't somewhat comfortable with public teaching, I would be, a little uncomfortable. So that middle group is, I still enjoy music. I don't want to try that hard, but I'm still going to take it seriously when I'm in the class. But it becomes more social, and it's really fun. They come to class and we have fun every day instead of it being like, oh God, we got to do this. Versus the chamber kids who all like, I really want to play Shostakovich.
Right.
They go in and they dig.
Yeah.
And
they're hungry.
Yeah, like my freshmen that come in, if they're already at All-State or honor orchestra, I usually bump them up. Because they don't need that culture. They're already dedicated to that.
Yeah. I have 2 amazing freshmen in my top orchestra this year, and one of them made All-State. The other one should have, but she's so busy with other things that she just didn't do it. But it's amazing, and then that motivates the upperclassmen too. When the freshmen come in and they're like, "Oh, she's first violin." Yeah, she is. Yeah. So it's really definitely a motivator for the older students to, not get beaten by freshmen.
Again, hearing the auditions live and they get to hear them coming up and all of a sudden moving up the ranks, it kind of lights that fire just a little bit, especially the seniors. They're used to sitting up front, and all of a sudden here comes this young 13-year-old. They're like, wait, I should work harder.
Yeah, we just had a little audition for a solo part in one of our pieces, and I was like, okay, we're going to go around, and then the freshman played, and I was like, we're going to give it to her. And everybody was kind of like, yeah. They all realized, like, some of them were like, wow, like they couldn't believe, but she works hard, and that's what it's about. That's what it's about. Yeah. Well, this is cool. We're gonna be sharing some tips and tricks, I guess, of violin pedagogy and cello pedagogy, and I think we should probably record it, and then we can take some excerpts from that, some things that are great. So, well, Harrison, thanks for being on the Orchestra Teacher Podcast and all the great stuff you've shared. I appreciate you being here, and just amazing to get to chat with you about this awesome stuff we get to do every day.
Likewise.
It's amazing. So this is our episode number 87. Signing off, Charles Laux and Harrison Cook.
Bye.
Thank you for tuning in. For resources and more information, visit orchestrateacher.net.